Hello and welcome to another episode of Chicory's Maintenance. This episode we're going to be dealing with these two endurance hoists that are responsible for launching our dinghy. I have one on the top here, and that one is the lifting. It lifts the boom for the mizzen mast, and then there's one on the bottom side that lifts the line that actually lifts the dinghy. And so I have some 3/4 inch aluminum that I bolted with stainless steel 3/4 inch bolts, one top, one bottom, that the winches bolt to, and this is held in position by clamp pressure, and there's a bolt up top that holds it from sliding up or rotating. And so this has worked really well. The dinghy is relatively light at like 300 pounds. These are rated for 500 pounds and have been mediocre at best. I bought them and thought they were going to be great because they're stainless steel, they're rated for 500 pounds. On paper they looked really well, but I've actually gone through two of them in a very short period of time. The remotes aren't that great, and I've just had problems with them. So I've upgraded to some Warren industrial hoists that are rated at 1,000 pound. And so this project is about replacing these endurance hoists with some Warren hoists. And so I'll document what I do. So I mentioned that I wasn't happy with the controls. And part of that is the endurance controls have the contactors inside this little handheld thing. And that actually, part of our problem has been that these contactors just are not resilient enough, and it's really hard to push them. The Warren, you'll see, is just a little toggle that is operating a remote heavy-duty contactor set. Much better design. So I'm going to use this right now to raise the boom, because I want to take this unit off and see if the bolt pattern for this will match the Warren. I wasn't expecting it to, but I just received the Warren shipment, and I opened it up and looked at the bottom and said, wow, you know, these might actually match, and I might not have to re-drill and re-tap this piece of aluminum that I fabricated. So I'm going to raise this up. Okay, that's about as far as it's going to go. So now I'm going to work on removing this, and I'm just going to grab, actually I'll move the camera just a little bit and kind of see what's going on. So I have this tapped right now with 3/4 20 thread holes that I have machine screws in, and so I'm just going to use my little impact driver and see if I can get them out. So you can kind of get an idea of, so it's a stainless steel 1/4 20 by 1 inch that's holding it in, 3 of them obviously. Take the next one out. And then this next one I'll actually be taking the weight of the winch. I gotta hold it a little bit. And there, it's off. So now I have to go get the Warren winch and line it up just to kind of see what's going on. I'll be back in a minute. So before I try and see how it fits, I just wanted to show you the difference between the units. So this one's got the motor here, gearbox here, and drum here. And I haven't looked at the schematic of this, but it appears as if the motor's here, and it must have a shaft that go through, and the gear must be here, and the clutch on the end, and then the drum here. So a little bit different. Hopefully the Warren industrial hoist will work much better. So now we're going to try and see how it fits. So I held it up there just before I'm showing you this, and it's close, but I don't think it's going to do it. I'm going to put one screw in just to hold it in position so I'm not hanging on to the weight. So I'm just going to put that on first. So now at least the weight is supported there. And I can focus on this a little bit more. So like I said, there was 3 screws. There's one at the top, the center, and then there's 2 slots that go side by side. And these 2 at the bottom are just a little misaligned. So I will have to take this plate off. I will have to re-drill it and re-tap it for these winches. So at least I know that. So I'm going to work on that as the next step. So I'll take off this hoisting hoist that lifts the boom, and then I'll take off these 2 aluminum plates, and then I'll start drilling and tapping, and I'll show you that step once I get everything apart. So I have the aluminum plates down here, and I've used the wire bristle brush to clean them up. There's a little bit of galvanic corrosion from the stainless steel plate interacting with the aluminum, and the aluminum material giving up a little bit of its atoms. So I have the worn industrial hoist here in position, facing forward the way it's supposed to be, and I'm just going to show you how I'm marking this. I'm going to mark the front edge with a Sharpie, the back edge with a Sharpie, so I have my position. I'm going to mark the circles as best I can with the Sharpie. And then I'm going to remove this, and for the entire area where the holes are, I'm going to color in black. The reason I'm doing this is because the Sharpie marker can't get into the space as well as I would like. So I'm using the Sharpie as like a machinist marking glue. I put this back in position, and then I have a little pick here which has a very nice point on it and an angle so I can get in there. So I'm going to scratch around the very outside edge on all 3 holes, making sure that I get the exact edge. And I don't know if you can see that, but it's super evident here exactly where that is. So then the next thing I'm going to do is I'm going to use a center punch. And if you're not aware of a center punch, it's a spring-loaded item, so if you push it down on a piece of aluminum or metal, it'll leave a mark where you can center your drill on. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to grab a ruler right now. I'm going to center divide both of these holes in the back and this forward hole so that I have a center point, and then I'm going to center punch it. I'll be back in a second. So I'm back with my ruler, and it happens to be that these are exactly 10 millimeters wide. So I'm just going to go to the top edge and a mark at 5 millimeter. I'm going to go down to the bottom edge. I'm going to mark that at 5 millimeter. And then I'm going to lay the ruler across. And I'm going to scribe. So now I've bisected that. And now I'm going to measure the length, and it is 35 millimeters. So I'm going to take my center punch at 17 millimeters, put it right on that line, and then punch a couple times, and now I have a huge dimple right in the center, both horizontally and vertically on that hole. I'm going to do the same thing on these. I'm going to do the same thing over on this plate, and I'll be back. So I have the aluminum plate here. It's marked out, center punched. I have a 1/4 inch drill bit. Now I know I mentioned that I thought I was using 1/4 but it's actually 5/16. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to drill with a 1/4 hole first, and then I'm going to chase it with the 17/64 that's required for tapping 5/16. So I'm just going to spray just a teeny bit of lube on my center punch hole. I'm going to eyeball it so that I have vertically and horizontally square. So I had to move out here because I was getting aluminum chips all over the inside of the cockpit. So I vacuumed that out and moved out here. I'm just going to finish up drilling these holes. And now I'm going to tap. Lube up the tap. Lube up the hole. So I'm just going to work on this and I'll be right back. So I'm done with the mounting of the hoists to the plates that connect to the boom. As I mentioned, they're 5/16 inch, 16 threads per inch, 3 bolts, stainless steel, and the size of the bolt allows it to go all the way through the 3/4 inch plate. So the entire 3/4 inch plate is threaded all the way through on all 3. So these are ready to go back on the boom, but before I do that, I need to work on the electrical, which will be the next step. So hang in. Before I mount the hoists onto the boom, I want to take care of the contactor controllers. The remote control hooks into here, and the wires from the batteries come in and from here to the hoists. So I need to mount these someplace, and there's not a really great place to mount them. So what I've decided to do is I had a piece of 1/2 inch starboard on the boat. I'm going to mount it here, and then I'm going to mount the controllers here. And so I'm going to start on that process now. And then once I get that done, then I'll put the hoist on here and then do all the wiring. So hang on. So I'm back. I've trimmed the starboard just a little bit, and I grabbed some stainless steel clamps. And this is how I'm going to clamp the starboard to the ladder here. I'm just going to put this around the ladder, come from the back side and screw it on. So I'm going to do that right now. Okay, that's pretty solid now. So now I'm going to mount the controllers to here. Okay, I'm back with the controllers, and so the contacts, there's this plastic case. It has a rubber cover that the remote control hooks up to, and then there's this weatherproof container here, and underneath it is the contactors for, and it's a reversing contactor set. So all I'm going to do is mark my position on here, about where I want it. There. So then I'm going to hold the contactor up, and I'm going to just trace the holes for drilling. Then I'm going to drill these holes. And then I'm going going to take some 1/4 20 screws, and I'm going to stick those through. There. And then I'm going to use some acorn nuts on the back side, just so I don't have some threads exposed. And I'm going to use a little Loctite on the back of these screws. So I'm going to push the screws through again. A little Loctite on the back side. I'm going to put the acorn nuts on. And I've got my screw gun, and I have just a little crescent wrench back side. And then the cover, once it goes on, just look like that. So now I'm going to put the next one on. Okay. So now I have the two relays on, contactor relays, and so I'm going to start wiring up. That's the next step. Okay, so now we're going to put the hoists back on the boom. First step is to take the top one, set it in position, hold entries. I'm going to drop the 4 1/2-inch bolts down, and then I'm going to come from underneath, hold the other one up, and put the nuts on.
Hold that while you do it, or what do you want done?
No, just hold it. This is narrow forward.
Yep.
All right, I think that's good.
Cool.
That's it. Thank you.
You're very welcome.
Okay, so now we have this mounted. Now I can start wiring it. I'm not going to show you the making of my battery cables, but I just wanted to show you a couple things. It'll be obvious later on, but I got these joined 2-conductor 4-gauge for this. I've got my lugs, I've got shrink wrapping, I got my heat gun to do the shrink wrapping. I've got my great super duper crimper here that can do up to 4/0 cable. And same with my cutter, can do up to 4/0 cable. So I'm going to start building these cables right now, and then you'll see me installing them. Okay, I'm just giving you an update. I'm not there yet, but I'm getting there. So I just wanted to show, I haven't tightened these up yet, but I've got the wires going to the motor, and then I've got a huge zip tie holding those in place so there's no strain on them. Then it turns around here, and I've got it zip tied to two halves of the hoist together. Comes down. I have another huge zip tie holding the wires. By the way, the duplicate is happening on the bottom side, so the same zip tie is holding both wires coming from both sides. So they come down the boom, and then I have a slack loop here that comes off, and it comes around underneath. And then I've got a clamp here that holds both sets of wires. You can see the other set of wires coming right here from underneath, and that's coming from the actual batteries downstairs, and I'll show you that in a second. So I found the best way to do this was to split the positive and the negatives and come them up each side. And so I'm going to move around up here. So So this is what it looks like from the top. And then what I needed to do is I needed to cut the bottom side of the control cover off so that I can line up the pin over here. There's a little pin and that pops in. So that's what it'll look like when it's done. But I still have to wire the bottom one. It's half wired, but the hot end coming in still has to be done. So I'll be back with you. Okay, so now it's all wired up. I haven't put the covers on yet, but I just wanted to show you the way it is. And so these should work as strain relief, and I've got plenty of extra material in here for the boom moving, so we should be good. So I'm just showing you the last little bit of wiring, which is just the remote plug, and it just it's wired like that. You have to kind of hold it in position, and then I just line up this little pin there, and then those two bolts there. I'm going to put those two little screws in, but now you can kind of see what it looks like. So I just wanted to show you how the distribution is. There's a breaker and a battery switch downstairs, which I'll show you. That's 1 gauge comes up to here. 1 gauge comes into the block with some 2 lugs, and coming out is 2 4 gauge for each positive and negative. And if I move around, you can see the remote over there. So the 4 gauge just run the short distance. Most of the run from the batteries is 1 gauge. So I'm down in the master stateroom. You can see the battery bank here. And then you've seen before that coming from the battery bank, I have the 4 Class T fuses that go up to a bus. Coming out of the second bus is this AL&L fuse, which goes to battery switch, which goes to the winches, or hoist rather, upstairs. So I'm going to turn those on. So now it's time to go test the hoists. So now it's the moment of truth. Got the 2 hoists all wired up. I have the contactor boxes. So as I told you, there's a little rubber cover that comes off. And here's what the remotes look like. So the remote plugs in. That one works. Let's try the other one. There we go. So this ends this video of installing the hoists for the launching the dinghy. As always, I appreciate you viewing, liking, commenting, and subscribing. See you next week.